I am here with Leigh Joseph, and I'm so excited to be talking about plant medicine, wisdom, and how it can support us in finding our rest and rest in a lot of different ways towards hopefully maybe a good night's sleep. So, Leigh, why don't you share all about yourself? Tell us everything.
Thanks so much for having me here today. I'll introduce myself in my Indigenous language first, just following a cultural teaching for these kinds of moments. Hosqual, Leigh Joseph, Queensna, Stiawit, Quashaman, Anranoxton, Skwalwen, Eochtin, Sequatal, Squamish, Ochomeo, Stopmis, Ochomeo. So what I just shared was good day or hello. My English name is Leigh Joseph, and my ancestral name is Stiawit. I come from the Squamish First Nation, which is based on the west coast of British Columbia in Canada, just north of the city of Vancouver. And I'm really happy to be here today with you. So yeah, a little bit about myself. I'm trained as an ethnobotanist academically, so that means that I study and research and work within the area of the cultural interrelationships between people and plants. So that, most commonly is in the form of food, medicine, or materials. But within this work, from a cultural perspective, there's so many relationships and so many, I guess, different elements to how it is that people build relationships with plants, with culturally important plants. So through my training as an ethnobotanist academically, I've taken, a Western scientific approach and really kind of delved into some of the, compounds and ecosystems and whatnot that plants grow in. But it's been really important for me to bring that together and weave that together with the beautiful teachings that have been shared with me by my community and by mentors in my community that really sort of take it away from kind of us studying something in nature to us being in relationship with our natural surroundings and with our plant relatives who can, when we show them respect and when we engage with them in sustainable and reciprocal ways, we'll also give back the gifts of, whether it be wellness or a certain material or the kind of things that I mentioned before.
And that's huge. And what a beautiful journey and able to do that of just I think what you really named was just relationship, building that relationship with ourself and the land. And I think that's what's missing for so many people.
Mm, definitely. I think that, there really is this tendency to sort of separate ourselves or to, in some extreme cases, sort of put ourselves above nature. And it's really, you don't have to go too far back, in our collective history to see how we're so directly connected to our environments. We're so reliant on them, and not from an economic standpoint or a development standpoint, but really from just like a human kind of survival and wellness standpoint. And I think the more that we can reconnect, to that intersection with the land and with how we've built relationships with natural spaces and with plants, that so can be so nourishing for people. And we really all carry that intersection within us, at some point in our life.
Yeah, agreed. And it's interesting. A lot of these have been the subtextual themes of a lot of the conversations of having on the podcast about sleep is really those intersections of these systems of oppression that, like, oh, tell us, oh, rest is like you're tired, it's your fault. And rest is all your responsibility. And I love bringing plants into this conversation too, because like the plants are so tangible and it's a way to unhook from these systems. The plants also kind of teach us of a different intersection of the land, of ourselves, of what's already there. If you wouldn't mind talking a little bit more then about the power and is it fair to say simplicity too of the plants? Because that's kind of in my mind and experience. Like it's so beautiful, like nature's so wonderful and like powerful, but also simple. The simplicity of
Mm.
connecting to one plant and really
Hmm.
entering into a relationship of that. And
Yeah, yeah, I think like when I think about simplicity, it comes down to the actual act, that it doesn't need to be like you don't need to study in this field, or you don't need to necessarily sort of front load yourself a lot before you go out into your natural environment and just close your eyes and take a breath and then open your eyes and look at what's around you. That's building a connection in a moment. And then, if you take that further, the simplicity of noticing the life cycle of a plant in your garden or along a favorite trail, seeing and noticing how, that plant relative, as we call them in Squamish, we consider plants to be relations. So looking at that plant and seeing how it's changing throughout the season, or what pollinators might be visiting it, all of those acts are simple in nature and things that we can all take a moment to do. Uh, and they all bring a deeper, mindful connection to a moment, but also to a particular place that might be, you know, either important to us or somewhere that we visit often. And I would say that, building on that, you can sort of go as in depth or complex as you're interested in learning about plants, especially from a cultural standpoint, because when you start to build those relationships and that familiarity with how they change, through the growing, through their kind of growing life cycle and through the seasons, there's also so much knowledge from an indigenous plant, perspective, that goes into really understanding how certain cues that the plant, offers during different times of the year, will cue that either it's time to harvest that plant, or it's time to give back to that plant in the form of tilling or weeding or burning, even, these practices that have been utilized to support plant um, relations for thousands of years. And then it also extends to a broader awareness. Often when certain plants come out in Squamish, it's indicating that a particular salmon run is starting, or a particular migratory bird has returned. So as you start to kind of build on that awareness of your surroundings, then those kind of gifts that you notice in your natural environment, I think, can really also instill, um, basically like help to cultivate, that mindful awareness within ourselves that then can also be drawn on, in times when we do need to sort of tap into those feelings of ground.
yeah, and there's so many layers with that too, because you're right. It's like stepping into the natural world with that sense of curiosity, observation, cycles, seasons, seeing how that shows up within us, within the world around us. But then also too, then the next layer of that, I hear it's like the specific plant itself and the wisdom from watching the plant, and then wisdom of understanding what that plant can do to support you as the person with the need, like your needs for fatigue, wellness, whatever it might be. Okay, and time to cultivate this one that's going to support this, and then you're entering this other relationship that's even deeper.
Yeah, exactly. And I think from that, like from a sleep kind of perspective, there are in so many regions in the world, including here, plants that are known to help, calm and prepare for sleep. And so, some of those might be like a plant we're very familiar with, mint, but like the wild mint variety is really excellent for just calming digestion, but also really like starting to slow down at the end of the day. Coastal sage also has some, it's in kind of the Artemisia family, which also has mugwort and other plants that are really known to kind of help, be related to supporting sleep. And dreaming too is very much connected to plants from like indigenous plant knowledge perspective, some of my teachers in my community have shared that we learn from the plants in our dreams if we kind of build those relationships and build that awareness and open our minds and hearts, to the energy and the gifts that these plants carry, that there can actually be, visitations and dreams where you learn about the gifts that these plants carry. And so I think, it's very much about, I think kind of all of these pieces of the puzzle can help to just bring that grounding and kind of calming, I guess, benefit of what it means to even just simply, take a moment to notice a plant, smell a plant, potentially taste, a plant, and to carry that, with us. And that can be, often people ask, like, well, what if I'm in an urban setting and I feel like I can never get out into nature? I think that I've heard people talk about, finding areas in the city where, in parks or in even in, a garden or patio or with a planter box, I think there's different ways to kind of invite those moments in, even if it feels like it's, further away. And just one other thing I'll say on that is I published a book last year called Held by the Land, which is very much about connecting to plants and building relationships. And I got an email from someone who read it, who was an Indigenous person from the prairies, so from one of the prairie provinces in Canada. And she's living really far from her home territory. And she said that it really weighed heavily on her heart that she couldn't be in the grasslands of her homeland, and that she felt like she wanted to be able to be there more. And she read through a section in the book that's on land-based visualization, which really kind of, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit, but it's really how you can visit these places on the land that hold an important place in your heart and in your spirit, through visualization. And for her, that was a really powerful way to be able to, connect to this place that she carried in her heart without being able to go and visit it, all the time. So I think it can be a really powerful tool, especially during times of, stress or kind of being, just feeling like, not regulated in the way that you want to, and kind of bringing yourself back to a grounded place.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that's a beautiful story, because it's, and those especially too in cities that we do feel that little bit more disconnected from nature, that it doesn't have to be so specific. Like, you have to be in the forest, you have to be by the water, and therefore get the most benefits. But I think that really just shows the reminder. And then even with you touching upon the dream work and having plants show up and building that relationship through the dreams, it's all these things I'm hearing as this reminder that we're so much more than these linear thoughts. And I'm just, because I often think about, like, and especially with social media, as we've been in Heart and Bones trying to like collect information for sleep and helping to educate people on sleep, and it just seems like so much of it is this, like, here's your protocols, here's the 5 things you need to do, and it's just, this puts a lot of pressure on us. So I love these reminders. Can you even, I'm just, for my own personal curiosity, like, talk a little bit more about the dream work? I'm just so curious. I really love hearing about this.
Yeah, I think that some teachings that are connected to, that dream piece are in our Squamish culture. The belief is that, when you're a child, even from a baby, that, traditionally elders within the community would be watching, the young ones and just looking for what gifts they carry. And,
Mm.
the belief really was that everybody carries a gift and that gift can be nurtured. And so if that gift was plants, then, there's also a lot of teachings around how to build relationships in respectful reciprocal ways. And so that's things like if you're learning about a plant medicine before you ever harvest that, you learn about the life cycle of the plant, what it needs to thrive, what practices we can do to give back to the plant, whether that be, actually managing the landscape around that plant, or offering, giving an offering to the plant in the form of a song or a prayer in whatever form that, makes sense to an individual. And all of those teachings really kind of prepare a person, I think, to be more attuned to this plant relative, as opposed to looking at something and saying, that's going to be a medicine that's good for this. You're looking at this relative, and if we all sort of take a moment to think about a relative that's important to us in our lives, what are some of the qualities of that relationship? We don't sort of just go see them when we need something and take something when we need that and go. There's a lot of care that goes into that. And so the dreaming part, that would be, I think, understood as a deeper, kind of part of that gift when that work has been done and that kind of mindful, practice and relationship has been done. And then you just sort of opening up, your mind and heart and spirit, I think, to the teachings that can come from that plant. And my understanding with that is that it really is, it's one of the ways that our ancestors learned about plant foods and medicines, along with watching, other non-human kin like birds and bears and other animals in terms of how they kind of self-medicated through the year at different times of the year, and also what they ate. So really interesting to think to the time, so long ago when people would have been learning initially about these plants and how to utilize them, but dreams are really a prominent part in terms of the cultural teachings with plant foods and medicines.
I love that. I love that because it gives permission to trust the intangible, right? Just trust that sense of like, okay, there's more here, and it's
Yeah.
enough, and it's valid, and beautiful example again of relative, right? How we care, and it's just like that's the metaphor for everything, isn't it?
Mm. Yeah, and I think, certainly for me going through like an undergrad in botany and then a like master's of science, like there is a lot of kind of structures and messaging that tell us like that's not, you can't prove that, so we're just going to look at the data and the numbers. And that's, that certainly has a role for so much of the work happening in that area, but it also can feel very kind of displacing and difficult to not have space for that relational piece. And Robin Wall Kimmerer, who wrote Braiding Sweetgrass, talks about that and her experience as an Indigenous grad student, and wanting to study why asters and goldenrod, these beautiful purple and yellow plants that she loved so much, why they grew together, and really coming at that from a curiosity perspective, a place of having noticed it and had that imprinted on her, and just how she came up against, so much kind of like really ridicule for that's not a scientific enough approach, that's not, yeah, it's not robust enough. And so I think that it really is interesting to create the space for feeling into that and that intuitive understanding of, if you close your eyes one night and a plant that you've been building a relationship with, shows up in that dream, then that's not, in my mind, something to sort of be pushed out and sort of written off. You can sit in that, and whatever that means to you, you can carry that. And I do think that, there are these experiences with plants that really can't be explained, and again, in a section of Held by the Land, I wrote a story about, or shared a story about when I was teaching in Haida Gwaii, so visiting Haida territory. And I'd gone out ahead of the class to pick a few plants to bring into the classroom for the first day. And one of those plants is a really culturally important plant, chatyai in Squamish, or Devil's Club in English. And so I was hiking up this trail and looking for the Devil's Club in the sort of wet depressions in the forest where it normally would grow. And I was going, I couldn't see it, couldn't see it. And then I just had this moment where it really felt like somebody kind of tapped me on the shoulder, and I stopped and I realized, oh, like I'm not invited to harvest this plant here. And I knew that. I knew that in that moment. So I said, okay, like, I said, hi, Chika, thank you. And I turned around to walk out. And it was just a few steps down the trail that I started to see Chatyai, or Devil's Club, in the forest. And I thought to myself, my first thought was, well, the trail looks different on the way down, trying to kind of logically explain it. But I had to work with myself to say, like, no, like this is the reason you ask permission, not just of local peoples, but also of the plants before harvesting. And that was an instance where I clearly had the answer no. And to respect that and to listen to that, felt like such a gift to be able to have had that experience. Because sometimes you go through these practices and these, giving offerings, asking permission, really understanding that your natural world also has agency and also, holds an equal meaning to us in terms of, nature. But it's rare to necessarily have those moments where we're really reminded. So if we're open and able to listen to them, then I think that's a real gift in and of itself.
Such a gift and such a good story. And what I'm hearing too, it's like, and you knew, and this is why you have these practices, but then just to have that extra gift of a very clear experience where it was like, yeah, I know. Oh, yes. Okay. That,
Exactly.
like we all need that. Those lovely reminders of like, okay, we know, but oh, okay, I got it. Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Oof, that's powerful. And like the whole thing just gives me kind of chills because it's just these like, again, I guess my brain just wants to keep coming back to like simplicity, but it's this mirroring of these bigger, deeper teachings of, again, unhooking from the dominant systems and the dominant culture that has taken us away from so much of this relationship and so much of the land. And when we think about rest and other conversations around rest being radical, rest being a way of divesting from these systems when we
Mhm.
aren't being productive, quote, quote, thank you, capitalism, when we're not being colonialism, where we're taking away and not being. So I think it's such a small but big act
Mm.
from what I'm hearing from you, that when we can go into relationship, however small it is, whatever start of that journey, we're heading into a different path, being part of maybe envisioning and enacting that world again where we are all in relationship and in respect and I like thank you for saying again of that the natural world has its own autonomy, right? Ugh, like
Yeah.
oh, yes.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And I think that the act, from an Indigenous perspective, the act of reinserting, ourselves onto a landscape or reclaiming, um, knowledge and practice is really a radical act. And I think for, humans in general who are really looking to divest from, sort of extractive systems that kind of, like you say, message to us that rest is not good, overworking is good, rest is doesn't have value. I think that what I've learned through both, I just completed my PhD in this field, and so I've certainly delved deep into the academic kind of realm with this. But some of the teachings that I've come back to time and time again when, working with an academic institution and sort of, needing to meet a certain level of productivity, but also really feeling when that's out of kilter and when I'm really disconnected from the whole reason, why I'm doing that work. Some of the teachings really are linked back to these simple acts and these visualization practices, and really connecting back into the fact that the whole motivator for me in this really was thinking about my grandparents on my father's side, who are both residential school survivors. Looking at the cascade effect within my family of that, and knowing that, for people who are surviving, for people who are deeply traumatized, they're not only the sum of their trauma, but they're surviving, and they're not necessarily able to go out and practice this part of cultural knowledge, go out on the land with their family, learn the plant names, learn the place names, and feel like they belong to the land. And that goes for all sort of areas of, cultural renewal that are happening with language, with law, but, our particular path is with plants. And so when I had my children, it was just so deeply meaningful to me to take them out on the land as I learned and as I reconnected. And the more that I kind of delved into literature, on systemic racism, on health inequities, with Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities, all these things that intersect with why I'm studying this field, I had to face a really deep grief of my family, what they'd gone through, of realizing that my children not too long ago would have been stolen from me at a very young age. I mean, these are heavy and very dark things to carry. And it was really my connection to the land and to plants that helped me process that to a new place where it's still heartbreakingly, difficult to think about these realities, but I also have this strength and hope and this sort of, standing in opposition to both the past, but the present, and envisioning, a future that's different. And that's all really grounded in, for me, in plants. Like my kids call me the plant lady, and they're not wrong. I think it's very much plants have guided me along on this, this path. And so again, I think even if we're not, even if everybody, listening to this is not a plant, scientist or a person that works with plants, there's still this ability to think about the connections that we hold. And that could be from a very young age, it could be present, but the connections that we hold to the land, and maybe plants that have held us, and supported us. And that could be a house plant, it could be a garden plant, it could be a native plant, in the area that you live. So I really think that there's a lot of power in these small acts, and then however we wish to, make our connections to the natural world and to plants can really, can uplift and also ground all of us as individuals.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. All, yes. Yes, 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 yes. All of the yeses on that. And I think that's a really nice lead in to maybe let's talk and go through a lovely land-based visualization that we can do wherever we are in this world that can help ground us and connect to our nervous system, connect to ourself, build more relationship.
I mentioned in my book Held by the Land, there is a section that kind of explains this and can be referred to, but this idea of land-based visualization really came from a couple of places for me. One, I'd been doing some work with a meditation teacher, and also within like counseling, where a practice, was introduced to me of picking a vision or an image and focusing on that image in my mind's eye when I was feeling really elevated, or my nervous system was really, activated to help calm myself down. So having that sort of visualization point. And I was sort of searching for what that would be. And when I started to go out onto the land and harvest more, and in particular on when we moved back to my home territory in Squamish about 6 years ago, and I remember going out one day to go for a nettle harvest, and my aunt brought me out there, and it was in a beautiful part of the forest where there was nobody else around. And I remember just, the feeling of stepping into the forest there, the coolness, still of the morning present, but having dappled sunlight coming through the new leaves of the, deciduous cottonwood and aspen, or yeah, cottonwood and red alder trees in that area, and feeling, that sun on my face, feeling the wind, like the breeze kind of in the forest. And it just really stuck with me as a moment of joy and of presence. My kids were there. I could hear them, kind of playing in the distance as we walked around and looked for stinging nettle, which is a really important spring food as well as medicine, and can be utilized for a number of different kind of uses, including tea that's really rich in iron. And so I started to go back to that moment in my mind's eye, and I started to really just spend more time noticing all the details, noticing how I felt, hearing my children there, and noticing what other plants were coming up at the same time. So the miner's lettuce was coming up, the stream violets were coming up, and thimbleberry shoots. And so just paying a lot more attention to that particular memory, I started to develop a practice that really helped me, through kind of stressful times over the last few years, of just laying down, putting, a hand on my heart, one hand on my belly, and just visiting this place and going sort of as deep as I had time for, or just really like picturing one moment, from this land-based kind of visualization of this place. So what I would like to do is just lead a short visualization for everybody listening to explore what, place or memory might come up for you, because we all have, as I mentioned, these intersections at some point in our life between land, potentially plants and people who've been important to us. So that's just a little bit of context for this, but I'll start now, and I invite you to close your eyes or look inward and take a deep breath. One more deep breath. I invite you to bring attention to feeling either your body in the seat or your feet on the ground. Bring some attention to how your body's feeling. And I invite you to think about a place on the land that's been important to you in your life. It could be a backyard garden, a favorite camp spot, maybe a trail or park. Feel what it's like to be in this place. Maybe notice what time of year it is. What's the air temperature like? Can you feel a breeze on your skin? Maybe the sun on your face. I invite you to bring closer attention in this place that's been important to you in your life. And notice if there's any plants that surround you here, and picture what the plant looks like, maybe what it smells like, perhaps what it tastes like, and just take in the beauty of this plant that's growing in this place that holds an important place in your own story and your own heart. Now, I invite you to think about if there's any important people that are connected to this place. Maybe somebody who you've spent time with here, or maybe they taught you about this place or the plants, and feel in to what it is like to be visiting this place on the land surrounded by plants and in connection with somebody who's been important to you. Notice how it feels to visit this place. I invite you to take another deep breath. Breathe in the feeling of this memory, and I invite you to bring your awareness back to your body. Maybe feeling your seat in your chair or your feet on the ground. Continuing to just take some deep breaths and bringing your awareness, back to this moment. I offer that this practice of visiting a place in your mind's eye that has been important to you is a way that you can access grounding and presence and these moments in our own lives that embody what it means to be connected to our natural world, and how so often those moments are also connected to the beauty of nature and the people who support us in our lives.
Thank you. Again, like the simplicity, there it is. And I hope as everybody is coming out of that, and we still have that kind of residue of the memory and the feeling, and just how in totality it was of it, of just sight, sense, smells, bringing in the people that we love. I was smelling my moss. My face was in the moss. It was one of my literal happy places, was putting my face in moss. So for me, it's like the smell was just, well, thank
Definitely.
you for being here and sharing. And I hope everybody goes out and gets Held by the Land, the book. And also you just put out the Held by the Land cards. So anybody who, I know if you're listening to this, you can't see anything, but I have, they're little, and anybody watching this, it's kind of showing up a little bit, but just a beautiful card deck full of information that talks about the plant gifts in the Squamish. And I really, of course, appreciate in the Squamish language here and pronunciation. But also there's the habitat and range, botanical description, sustainable harvest and timing. So just, and it can be, I love the simplicity of the deck too, because it's sort of like, for me, I'm kind of like, okay, what plant do I need to know of today? And then I can pull out and be like, oh, okay. Ha, Devil's Club.
Oh,
Of course.
interesting.
Yeah, of course.
Oh,
That is funny. That made, yeah,
that's
there it is.
beautiful. Yeah.
Oh,
There's
that made
there's
my
some
eyes water.
connections there.
You're good.
Aw,
Okay, thank you, Devil's Club. Good.
yeah.
Sending this message. Listen a lot right now. All right, so
Exactly.
I'm all tender right now. Thanks. That
Mm.
it's really the medicine's working on me. That's
Oh,
funny. So if
yeah.
anybody's sorry if you're not listening to this, I just got teary. I don't know if you can hear it in
Yeah.
my voice. That's just there's the heart opening.
Mm. Yeah,
Ah, okay. Well,
absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, I forgot to mention that if anyone is wanting to find the book or cards, they are carried at lots of like major bookstores and independent bookstores. But I also have a business called Skwalwen Botanicals, which is a plant-based skincare business that really looks to increase Indigenous representation and storytelling, but also really you know, put forward sustainability and kind of care and relationality in terms of how botanical ingredients are sourced. But on the Squalwen Botanicals website, we also have Held by the Land and the cards listed there.
and that's the best place to get it, really. So when you're purchasing Held by the Land cards and book, I highly recommend. And you have a Devil's Club salve, don't you? Am I right in thinking
We
this?
do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
temporarily kind of just getting a little bit we're just working on the packaging a little bit, but yeah, that will be back on the site soon. And we have a Devil's
Yeah.
Club bath
Okay.
and
Good.
body oil as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because that's what I haven't used yours. I do have another local person anyways, and like speaking of Devil's Club, like I use it on it really legitimately, I'm in awe of how much it actually, if I've got a little twinge or my lower back feels kind of wonky, I'll
Yeah.
put the salve on and it's like it works. It's good.
Yeah.
So everybody go purchase everything at Skwalwen and buy it all. And Leigh, again, this is such a treat. Thank
Mm.
you. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. It was really lovely to sit with you and have this conversation.
I don't know about you, but I am ready to get outside, put my face in some moss, and feel the healing, beautiful power of the land. And for extra sleep support, you can join our Better Sleep program. It is absolutely free if you are a member of the Heart and Bones Online Studio. Get the info and details for that through the link in the show notes. And I hope you have wonderfully sweet, supportive, fabulous dreams. Thanks for being here.